take a break.
Okay, Yona, I think you were.
Yeah, so for me, one thing that really works for me is that I have a designated work area. I do not work at the kitchen or the dining table. I blissfully ignore the advice from the suggestion from the school that the smaller kids are to be sort of monitored when they are in their online classroom, because that really takes away too much time for me if I sit next to two of my kids basically the whole morning then, because their meetings are staggered as well. So I can hear them when I'm in my, I have set up a desk in my bedroom, and I can close the door and I can tell the kids, I'm in a meeting now, you can't come in, or I'm in a meeting but you can come in if there's something you need. And for me that really helps, because if I go into my bedroom during the day, I go into my office and do some work, and I'm not sitting in the living or dining area.
Anyone?
So I can go. So one thing I'd like to say is very true. I'm very privileged in not having any major responsibilities apart from looking after myself. My wife and I share the house. She moved out of the office, not out of the house, but out of the office. She's the one working at the dining table. I got to keep the office. It's a challenge because we both are on Zoom meetings, often in parallel for much of the day. But productivity is actually not the most important thing right now. And Bethan, who's actually on the call here, gave me a very nice quote, which I wanted to share with you. And unfortunately, she also doesn't know where it comes from. So we can't give credit to the person who came up with it. Still a good quote, even if we don't know who said it. And it goes like this: you're not working from home during a crisis. You are at home during a crisis trying to work. And I've actually taken this to heart, right? I think if you change your mindset to that, to get away from, I'm working from home. No, you're not. You are at home. And it's a crisis out there. And lots of things will go through your mind. And lots of distractions will happen. And lots of stuff. For many people, it's looking after kids. For me, one of the biggest mental distractions is that I have family abroad who are getting to an age where things happen and I can't get to them. All right. And I know that a lot of our students and postdocs are in similar situations. We have lots of people coming from all over the world, spending time at Monash, and you have your friends and family back somewhere and you can't get to them. So all you can do is cross your fingers that nothing happens. And then they tell you it will be 12 months. And now it gets really difficult mentally. So how do I deal with it? I always had, if people been in a panel on sort of working effectively, I always had techniques, and I found them very important, even more important now than ever. So one I use is this 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. It's called the Pomodoro technique. So I work for 25 minutes and I take a 5-minute break. It's perfect. You go make a tea, do your, humanly needs that you have, and come back and work another 25 minutes. And I think that works really, really well. It keeps me going throughout the day. The other technique I use is I mix up, I have two kinds of work and I don't mix them up, but I actually schedule. One is called deep work, where I do stuff that takes a while and where I have to think hard and where I have to work hard, like preparing lectures, preparing workshops, writing papers, providing comments on student papers, so on. And then I have shallow work. And shallow work is responding to lots of emails where I don't have to think much about stuff, doing all the admin that I have to do, all that. And I separate them. And in my calendar, it will actually say deep work for the next 2 hours and shallow work for those 2 hours. And then I don't mix them. When I do shallow work, I don't even try to think about hard problems. And when I do hard problems, I try not to get distracted. And I found these two, just making my schedule for the day around those two ideas. One is this deep versus shallow, and whatever I can fit in meetings and other things is really, really helpful. And it's sort of like Jonas says, when you want to do the deep work, maybe that's the hour where you can convince your kids not to interrupt you. Maybe they will come anyway. I don't know how you guys are doing it. I'm just in awe of all the people who do this and have to look after kids at any age, really. So yeah, and then there's only one other rule. I'm a man of rules, and that's no news during the day. And I didn't do this initially, and it was terrible. I had to do something because, especially in the early, when things got worse and worse and worse, I was really distraught and distracted by the news. So now it's very simple. I start doing around 8, and that's when there's no more news. I don't even check all day, and I stop working. And whenever I stop working, somewhere between 4 and 6, depending on the day, and that's when the news is allowed to be turned on again. And in fact, I don't watch news because I know that images are much worse than words when it comes to emotional impact. And so since I'm a bit emotionally impacted easily, I know that about myself, so I don't watch news ever. There's no pictures, I don't see anything. I just read about stuff. Anyway, that's me.
So I'll top it off and add some things that you guys haven't already mentioned, because I'm in agreement with all of you. One thing about the news is that I absolutely don't watch any news. I only have 3 news sources. One is Facebook, where if it's a big enough news, it will make it onto my Facebook page when all my friends are sharing. And so, I'm only really reading or hearing about the most important stuff. The other one is we have a Facebook group with the ECRs where we are discussing what's happening in the department, and that's where we share information and how it impacts us as ECRs. And that's important work-related news that's also COVID-related. And I maybe read Bloomberg, or I just read the notifications just so that I'm sort of aware of what's happening. But I don't switch on the news, I don't listen to news report, because the way they're talking is often in a very emotional tone. And I think it does prime you, and it does affect you emotionally, even if you're not very aware of that. So I don't do any news. I also treat distractions as a reward for myself. So I'm usually getting distracted because I'm either too stressed or my mental state's not good enough to be doing deep work. And that's why you're getting distracted easily. And I'm not talking about like kids, coming for requests, like those are important distractions. My distractions are more like, I feel like snacking now, or I'm gonna make a coffee, or I feel like just walking around the house. So it's more internal distractions. And what I do is I try to finish the task that I have, or at least finish the part that I'm doing. And then I reward myself by going to get myself that distraction. So I have 2 cats in the house and a partner. And what I usually do is I go disturb the cats so that I'm getting some sort of animal, human, mammal interaction, without bothering my partner too much. But it's also quite fun to play with pets. And I think that gives me positive effect, which in my world, it's considered resources. And then that gets me back on track. So once I have my one little distraction, I go back and do something else, and then I go distract myself again. So that way I don't feel bad about, being distracted or feeling like I have to be 100% productive when I'm working from home. So I think, the quote that Christian and Bethan gave is absolutely on point. And in management, that's all we're talking about right now, about how we should be kinder to ourselves and not, beat yourself up for being distracted or not as productive.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Would you like to carry on with the next question, perhaps? Without clear boundaries of a separate workplace, is it possible to keep a healthy work-life balance?
So I can start off with that, because there's an entire research area on boundaries and work-life. So the way you can categorize boundaries would be temporal, physical, and psychological. And right now, the most important boundary that we don't have anymore is the physical part, right? Because you don't have a workspace to go to. And even if you have a work desk, that is a very important boundary that you can draw from yourself. So for example, you have a table set up in your bedroom, and that's your workspace, and it's your designated workspace. And it's much better than, for example, working on your bed or on the kitchen table where you're doing other things there as well. And having that very simple physical boundary is actually quite important, because it primes your head or your brain into thinking that there is some sort of structure around you, even if it's a psychological one. So just to add on to that, temporal boundaries are actually quite important as well. So as I would think all of us know, it is quite tempting to work late into night or to feel like I don't have any other responsibilities or activities to attend to. I'm just gonna do some more, like do more emails or read another article, and it goes on and on and on. So timing is actually quite important to sort of build a schedule around for yourself so that you are primed for a structured work day. So you can, switch it up as Christian suggested to make it more interesting, but it's quite important to, at least for myself, wake up and eat at a consistent times so that your body is primed for temporal boundaries. And if you can get sunlight, it's actually quite important because that really resets your physical body to recognize that it's day. So I would suggest these two things, temporal and just spatial boundaries that you have to put in place for yourself.
Okay, so I'll open it up to the rest of the panel if they have anything they'd like to add.
Maybe I should clarify the schedule thing. I still have a very strong temporal boundary between work and non-work. It's just within that work bit, I'm not trying to do the same schedule every day. I mean, meetings help to prevent that anyway, but I'm not going for a run at 11 every day. Sometimes I go at 11, sometimes I go at 5 in the afternoon when I'm done with work. But I just try and mix that up. But, the work starts at a certain time and ends at a certain time. I think that's really important. I'm interested in the psychological boundaries, but we can talk about that later because I had this lovely quote from a BBC article that I want to share. It's ascribed to a psychologist, I think, by the name of Gianpiero Pedriglieri, clearly Italian. Well, one shouldn't guess, but maybe, likely Italian. And he says, what we're doing right now is we have these social roles, right? We have these social functions. One of our social functions is work. One of our social functions is family. Other social functions is if you're in a sports club or in a band or whatever. And usually each of these functions comes with this different space. They're spatially separated, right? For work, I go to work. Family is at home. I play golf. That's on the golf course. I play tennis. That's in the tennis club or whatever. And what he says is that basically that's missing. And the quote's quite cute. It says, imagine you go to a bar, and in the same bar, you talk with your professors, you meet your parents, and you date someone. Wouldn't that be weird? And that's what we're doing right now, because all our interactions happen on these video tools. And that's like going to the same bar for 3 completely different purposes. I think we would all feel very weird if in the bar where we date someone is also the bar where we meet our parents an hour later or something like that. It would just freak us out. And I think overcoming that is something that we are struggling with. And this is perhaps these psychological boundaries as well. So all I do is really, I have a start to my workday and an end to my workday. And they are hard, but I've always done that. So I don't find that harder now than before. They are hard boundaries. There's no thinking about work before and there's no thinking about work after. It's just not going to happen. And I achieve that by really having lots of other things that I like doing, cooking, playing an instrument, playing, I bought a net to hit golf balls into, all that sort of crap that one does to entertain oneself. So, but that's what gets me out. And I have a dog. So talking about pets, very well known. If you need a bit of oxytocin in your brain, go and pet your pets if you have some. And then so the end of my work day has always been and still is walking the dog. So when I'm done with work, I take the dog for a walk, no matter what the weather, come rain or shine. And I come back and I know work's over.
Okay. Does anyone have anything to add, or we can move on to the next question?
Yeah, I think nothing more to add here, just to highlight that the physical boundaries, I think, are pretty important. So, yeah, I understand that the conditions of different people are, of course, very different. Some have a possibility to get their own room, and then their partner gets another room, and kids get another room. So, but this is not always possible. So, and there need to be some compromises and solutions found, because always sharing the same very small space with some other person who is also doing work might be not just unproductive, but it might also run into unnecessary and unpredictable conflicts. So yeah, these solutions need to be thought.
Okay. So we might go on to the next question then. So for those with children, what strategies are there to juggle work with additional caring responsibilities? And I think, Yona, did you indicate you wanted to write an answer?
Yeah, I can. So I have 3 children at home. One is in year 9, one is in year 6, and one's in year 3. So 2 in primary, 1 in secondary. And so what we do, what works for us is, so my 14-year-old daughter in high school, she basically still has the same school schedule as before, just that it is all remote. So we organized our day according to her schedule. So we have, so for the 2 little ones, I broke the day in basically 3 school periods. So one is from 9 to 11:30, because my daughter can have a 20-minute break, my oldest daughter a 20-minute break at 11:30, and then we have like a little snack, morning tea, recess, whatever you want to call it, together. And then they go on to the second school period, and then we have lunch usually at 1. I think they're in the kitchen making their own lunch at the moment. So yeah, then we have lunch, and then weather permitted, so if it's not pouring and raining cats and dogs, we go for a little walk so that we get some exercise and some fresh air and sunlight and whatever. And then they have another hour. So we usually finish, I say school finishes between 3 and 3:30, and then the afternoon they can do whatever they want, whatever they feel like. And I also see that I get most of my work done until 3, and then I spend the afternoon with them. But what I really found helpful for me is, so one thing, I lowered the expectations for this term, not only for what I can do during the day with my work, but also what they can achieve in school. And that our main focus is that we all stay mentally healthy and don't go completely crazy. So if, for instance, my 8-year-old is just not to, I can't convince him to do a task that his math teacher has set him, I will not go into a fight with him. I just let it go and find something else for him to do that's still sort of educational, but I will not, pin him down to do tasks he can't be bothered to do, because that will just, I don't know, it was just too much negative energy then in the house, and we all stay in the house. So I try to keep that low without, giving in every time and giving him a way out, of course. But I think there's a fine line between that, really making them doing work they don't really want to do, or they need too much help doing it, and then I just let it go and he does something else. And yeah, so I also, we play a lot of board games together, first of all to be just together as a family, but also for, I think there are always board games where they can learn something, whether it's probability or it's math, because there's like money you have to exchange, and they need to figure out what, or I can practice reading with my youngest if we play like a trivia game where he has to read out the questions and that sort of stuff. So I think you can be a bit creative with the school curriculum, and I'm very lucky that our primary school is convening that message to the parents, and they say, look, the most important thing is we all go through this still well in our physical, psychological health, and if they miss some academic work, there's still time to catch up on that later, so don't worry about that too much. Yeah, I think that's...
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open it up to the panel if anyone has anything they'd like to add or some other experiences.
Yeah, I can also add. So my boys are in prep and in year 3, I think. No, 4. I always forget, sorry. So the older one is very well organized. So we were not harsh on him, but discipline was always very important in our families. So he's very well organized on his own, so he can stick to the schedule, study on his own, and this is really, really great help for us. The younger one is obviously not capable of doing this yet and causes a lot of trouble, but at the same time, he has an example of the big brother in front of him, so this also helps. But generally, of course, they do require a lot of attention, and as Jona summarized, we are also doing many of these things, and including the extracurricular activities like playing board games and so on and so forth. So, sorry, one important thing they are really lacking while not going to school, sorry, talking too much, is the lack of the physical activity. I think this is the major problem for kids, especially at this young age. So what we are doing, we are lucky owners of ancient Xbox 360, which has this Kinect thing, which is the essentially a camera that tracks your movements, and you can play the video games while actually doing a lot of physical activity. So we have a conditions, very strict condition, that the only video games they play is that involve a lot of jumping, a lot of sit-ups, and so on and so forth. So, and then spend at least 30 or 60 minutes in the middle of the day to keep them in at least some shape. So this is one of the, they already got used to this. I'm not sure what we're going to do when they're back to school, because they got to use that in the middle of the day, they play these video games, and then they will be very unhappy and will probably nagging us that they need to play it in the afternoon. Another thing we are very lucky to have is that our Kung Fu classes were transferred to the online form of delivery. So we have all our coaches in front of us on the Zoom again, and the kids are just standing in front of the camera and following all the movements and train also really well. Another thing I've done for them, I've built a pull-up bar, and now they're training pull-ups in the garage. So trying to keep them physically fit as much as I can. So, and I'm not too much worried about the academic part of the school, especially at this age, because anyway, we've been learning much more at home than at school. That's very sad to acknowledge, but that's the situation. But yeah, I think the physical activity, especially for the kids, young kids, is very important at this age.
Okay. Anyone else want to add anything, or shall I move on? If there's no adding, I'll move on. Okay, thank you very much. So the next question is about lab-based research. So how can we best make use of working from home to further our research, especially if it's lab-based? So I might start with you, Sasha, because I believe you're lab-based.
Yes, we are lab-based. Yeah, so this is obviously a huge challenge. Although I'm not working in the lab, unfortunately, anyway, as I already mentioned, made sure that I'm in the lab at least a couple of times per day, see how things are going, and helping with advice to guys, this should be changed, this should be done in a different way. So yeah, this is definitely a great challenge for me that I cannot do that. And yeah, all of our researchers and students are lab-based, and they need to do experiments to move forward with their projects and with their PhDs. So we anticipated, of course, that this lockdown will happen, and started planning a bit in advance what can be done. So people who can write up things were obviously switched to a lot of data analysis and summarizing what they've done and writing up papers and summaries of their research. So this is pretty obvious. However, additionally, what we considered, we asked our colleagues, which we are very lucky to have, who are theoreticians, to help us with extending our expertise. For example, several researchers from our team are now being trained by our great colleague in the computational chemistry, and hopefully by the end of the next month, they will be able to do some basic tasks on their own, and this will substantially aid, support their projects going forward. So this is probably one of the key messages here, which we should have implemented from the very beginning. I'm very happy we did it in our groups, is that we need to broaden our skills, broaden our expertise. So if you cannot do work in the lab, we can simulate this, at least attempt to simulate this work on the computer. And this proves to be working quite well. And apart from that, of course, back to the papers, I think we have quite a few new significant papers being written during this lockdown period. So, and several students have also been busy with writing on papers and preparing for their milestones. Eventually, I think 90% of our group managed to keep more or less productive as they would normally do. So we were lucky to plan everything more or less in advance. And additionally, some of the researchers were able to maintain access to the lab, but on a very, very short period of time, obviously, due to their faculty regulations. This probably also helped a bit. But the main message here was that the key to not losing productivity was to broaden the skills, to switch to something else, and to learn new things. And I think this worked pretty well.
Thanks very much for that. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add?
Yeah, so I'm lab-based as well. I mean, as I said, I'm the lab manager of the isotope lab. So yes, of course, a big chunk of my usual day-to-day work life is now basically cut out because I do not do all my maintenance tasks in the lab and supervising students in the lab at the moment. So we try to be a bit proactive when we kind of, could see that a lockdown is coming. I mean, we maybe had like a good week or so where we could plan ahead a little bit, so we could get some analysis done of people who we knew are on deadlines for PhDs or other important deadlines. We could do those analysis so that those people have something to do during the lockdown. And yeah, I think what Sasha said, trying to gain other skills that you usually won't have time to do because you're so bound with lab work. That is maybe a good use of the lockdown if you can do that. Yeah, if you have enough data for finally starting that publication, which you also maybe put off because you always had so much to do in the lab, now is a good time to do that. But also on productivity, I think it is important to say, on one hand, yes, what Christian said, we are in a crisis and we need to manage that while still trying to get work done from home. Rephrased or paraphrased what you said. But I think on the other hand, it's especially for people on contracts, that is hard because you kind of feel you have to be productive to have something to show. Otherwise, your job might be in jeopardy. So I think that's a very hard thing to juggle between, not doing too much and risking your mental health. But on the other hand, I can see the worry for people on short-term contracts, on contracts in general, that they feel I have to be productive. If I come out of this 5, 6, 7 week lockdown with not one paper to show, then everybody will think that I'm a failure. So I think that's a big risk.
Yeah, I think that's Christian. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on that. So I completely get that, but I think being productive and working a lot are not the same thing anyway. So I think it's really trying to focus on your work and trying to identify what's important. And I'm not lab-based, so for me, really I don't do research much anyway at the moment. I'm busy preparing some teaching, but and the students and postdocs are doing research, so I'm helping them continuing that. and all their work's computer-based. So we are quite fortunate in that sense that we don't have that. But really, I think recognizing that maybe in situations like this, it's advisable not to push the 12-hour days, you know, even if you could, even if you don't have responsibilities that prevent you from doing it, is probably a good thing. And then to say, well, if I wanted to work 6 hours because that's all I really feel I should or can for whatever reason, then make those 6 hours count. So to me, that's the key thing about productivity. And there are techniques that can help you to try and identify what's the most important thing to do right now. And is now the time to do it, or will I be distracted? If you know in advance you're going to be distracted for the next 3 hours, don't work on a paper, for instance, right? Or if you think, oh, this 3 hour window, I have no meetings, I have nothing for the next 3 hours, I'm actually feeling good. I think I'm not going to be distracted. Now's the time to attack something big. And I think that's where it's really hard, because our brain doesn't like to work hard. It's a biological thing. Don't worry. It's not because you're lazy. It's just the brain. And using energy is something the body likes to avoid if it can, because then you have to replenish the energy later and you don't know whether you're going to have food, except you do. So the brain loves to be distracted. And I think Zen was saying how she has this sort of, being easily distracted at certain times of the day and in certain circumstances. That's just natural. You just have to accept that that's going to happen and try and minimize it again. Yeah. So I think productivity isn't the most important thing, but effectiveness when you have the opportunity to work is still important. So trying to find ways of focusing when you're working, and equally hard focusing on not working when you're not is a thing that helps me a lot. I'm really trying to be focused. Doesn't always work. We're all human, right? You want to focus, doesn't work. Hey, we'll come to that. I have the mindfulness mantra of acceptance in a later question. I think that's also really, really important in these days, to accept that certain things are the way they are rather than fight it. So we'll come back to that probably.
Yeah, I very much agree with all of that, cutting myself slack, and when I think I might have gotten something done and just accepting that that wasn't possible today, accepting that that's fine has made a bit of a difference over this period, particularly, and in general.
I'm a bit different.
Sorry?
I'm a bit different. I prefer to fight myself.
Yeah, we all are.
Explain. Yeah, I think finding the thing that works for you is part of what's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
I'm conscious of the time, so I might move on. I've had a question come to me in chat, which is hopefully covered off by the next one, so I'd like to make sure we get to that. So what strategies do you use to manage the social isolation of working from home? We have talked about interacting with partners and pets, but there are people who live alone and don't have partners and pets with them, families elsewhere. What strategies might people use to manage that social isolation?
So yeah, that's so for me that's very relevant, because as I said, I live with the kids but with no other adults, so I don't have really much of adult interaction like normal face-to-face, which is challenging, and so I try to work around it. I have at least two, again, it's not all Zoom, but computer-based meetings with friends during the week, so one on Tuesday and one on Saturday, and that's days I look forward to. I know I see these people. On Tuesday night we meet usually face to face anyway, and we play a certain game together. It's a German card game, so it's my German friend group, and that we keep this going via Skype and an app that we can all use where this card game is on, and we can all play it while sitting together via Skype.
It's not Skat, is it Skat? You're playing Skat?
Doppelkopf.
Oh, Doppelkopf. That's even better. I needed to find out. Sorry.
Yeah, and so that helps me also scheduling scheduling my week a bit, and having at least two things where I know I don't have to ask people, or do you have time today to meet, but these are fixed meetings I have and I look forward to, and I know I have interactions with other adults. And I also talk more on the phone with my mom in Germany. That helps as well, and I think I think a lot of people would find that we now reconnect with friends we maybe haven't talked to in quite a while, and now it's like the time to reconnect. It's one of the positive things for me. Not with my mum. I connected with my mum before as well, but I think I have more time now to talk to her on the phone. Yeah, so that's my strategy.
I'll open up to the panel. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add? We have one more question to address if we can.
I'll add very quickly. I think when we went into lockdown, I had so many Zoom meetings that I just didn't want to talk to anybody for a while. And now it's sort of, going the other way. I mean, there are many strategies you can do with social isolation, which you and I talked about. But one thing that I wanted to highlight was the ability to just be by yourself, and then the need for social interactions to be distracting to your own thoughts, for example. So, this comes back to mindfulness and maybe rumination and a lot of worry, or you're not really paying attention to your own thoughts. And we've used in the past workspaces and social interactions as a way to quieten those thoughts. And now you don't have a choice, but you have to be alone at home. Those thoughts or worries or rumination, they tend to become very loud. And therefore, we are also seeking distractions to sort of quieten those thoughts down. Because I also do research on mindfulness, so we discuss this quite a lot. And the only real advice that I have is that it takes a while to get used to these thoughts. And the key is really to accept it and to know that, and to be aware and accepting of these thoughts that come up, rather than get stressed out about it. And then you scramble to try to find more distraction to sort of quieten those thoughts. So social isolation is real. And I'm just pointing out another perspective, that the need for social interaction or a lot of work is really a way to distract yourself from just hearing yourself think.
Yeah, so I think it might be worth, since we're talking about strategies, what one could do. If any of you who are online have ever thought about getting into this mindfulness stuff, I was just from my own experience about 10 years ago. I had never heard of mental health issues, and I had never even considered doing meditations or mindfulness and things like that. Then I had a complete breakdown, and I completely changed my mind. And I think it saved my life. Maybe it is too strong a statement, but you never know, because I got round the bend and got back to what is a normal life, right? But so if you ever consider doing it, now would be a good time to get into it, because you really not only might have the time. Everybody says now is a good time because we have the time. I think that's rubbish. I have less time than ever. But now is a good time from a usefulness perspective. You may still not like it. You may give up after a few attempts, but there's plenty of tools and apps, and initially they are free. And so two I know of, one's called Headspace and the other one's called Calm. Calm is a very famous one by now. And they do help you, especially if you're by yourself or just the two of you. It's kind of hard to find a trainer, but these apps have training programs built in. So try them. No harm done. If after a couple of days you say, this is rubbish, I really don't want to get into it. Give it time. It's a skill. It's not something, it's like many things in life. You have to invest a bit of time to learn it, and only then will you know whether it's for you or not. And I use that. So I use the acceptance that there's more isolation. And I think, following on what the others said, is I actually make it a habit to focus on the things that are me rather than us, right? So reading is a me thing. It's not an us thing, right? So I read a bit more, and I actually enjoy that. I have a piano which I play badly, but it's me playing, not us playing. So spend a bit more time on that again, and it's actually kind of nice. Nothing wrong with watching Netflix or we shouldn't say Netflix, watching movies and TV, or the things that you like. You can do that together. You can even have a chat if you have someone in the house. And if you don't, then you can ruminate about it afterwards and maybe exchange views on a certain movie, and is The Godfather overrated and stuff like that, you know. Yeah, so that's what I do. And I do it quite deliberately, because rather than fighting it again, it's useful to accept that we are a bit more isolated and find the things in your life that you can do by yourself, and you've forgotten that they are actually great. Like reading. Reading books is something I never have time for. And I find that if I'm by myself anyway, it's great to do.
So I just want to add on.
Please.
There is research showing that if you start practicing mindfulness at the beginning, you will get more stressed out because now you're confronting a lot more. So what you've used to you've once used a lot of distraction to avoid facing those noises in your head, but now you have to confront them, and that's a new skill to be developed, right? So your resources are being used up while confronting more demands. So if you do start and then it gets more annoying, just be patient and then just accept. It really just comes down to just being chill and being okay with it.
So I'm starting to get messages that people have to run off, and I'm conscious that probably everyone has other Zoom meetings to go to. So we've just got a couple of minutes left. So normally I would ask for a round of applause for the panel members, but maybe I'll just thank everyone for their time. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get to the asking questions. So perhaps if anyone does have questions that haven't been addressed, please send them through to either Felix or I, and we will see what we can arrange to try and make sure that we can cover off any concerns that people have. So thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you so much to the panel for your insights, and everyone take care.
Thanks a lot for inviting.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.